theological matters and scriptural, interpretation, application, his conversion story, all of it just was profound for me in my journey. And I used to listen to his tapes as we traveled from gig to gig in the middle of the night. It would keep me up at night. I would be able to study and think. And honest to truly, I learned so much from those tapes that at the end, I can remember one final moment in terms of this whole process where all the things that I'd heard from those tapes and all the things I'd read from all the books over the last year or so, they all kind of just fell in place one night. I was sitting at my house. We were home, obviously, not touring, and I was thinking and meditating on all the things that I'd been studying, and all of a sudden, a light came on. I've kind of prefaced this earlier in some of the things that I've discussed, but all of a sudden I realized, Chris, for the last, I think it was like around 28 years, you have been your own interpretive authority. You have been the final authority in regards to theological matters in your life, and you're a wreck. I mean, I had been to a multitude of different denominations. We had gone as a family to different churches because one here didn't sound right, one there didn't treat us properly, one, over yonder didn't have what we liked theologically. And we, seriously, as a family, were clinging to try to figure out where we could go and feel comfortable. And I realized that that was the case because of this interpretive, individual, spiritual Rambo mentality that had predominated my thinking. I can think and I can remember back, but I can't really describe to you in detail all that took place that night. It just was amazing how all those pieces seemed to fall in place because I realized that God had given me a definitive authority, teaching authority in regards to faith and morals in His church. There was not a need to question any longer. I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to know all the Greek and all the Hebrew. I didn't have to understand the complete culture of that time and those places. I could finally rest because God had guaranteed that the gates of hell would not prevail against the church. Now, I remember there was a scripture verse off the top of my head. I can't recall the reference, but it talks about a kingdom divided against itself won't stand. And I just feel that division is not a reflection of unity, obviously. And honest to truly, for me, I came to the point in my walk when I really felt like I didn't have to be necessarily my own interpretive authority any longer, and I could embrace and run and cling to and fall into the interpretive authority that God had established for me here in time, and that was the Catholic Church. As you're out there and you're either driving or you're listening to this tape, I'm sure some of you think, okay, you have completely fallen off your rocker. And honest, truly, I don't blame you for thinking that way, because I can remember as a young guy going and putting tracts on people's cars when they were in Mass. I did that once. I can remember I used to put tracts in, New Age books in bookstores. I would go and I would talk with people about everything theological because it was imperative that people understand the personal relationship with Christ, that was to be the primary focus of one's spirituality. And I felt specifically regarding Catholicism that they placed traditions over individual spirituality. And so I can't blame you for being upset or frustrated, but I can say, and I just want to encourage you, that God didn't just get it right finally in the Reformation time frame. I mean, for 1,600 years, it wasn't just a craze. It wasn't just a small, secret, little, hidden, undefined church that was in existence here, there, under this bush, over there, under that bush. It was a visible, tangible church. And I absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, saw that time in and time out, again and again, in all these works that I was reading and seeing. And they were not contradictory to Scripture, rather it was pointing back again and again to those scriptural references that I had grown up and loved so much. So here is the schmeal as I get ready to wind up this little chat. One is, if you'd like to discuss really in-depth regarding certain specific issues, you can feel free to email me at cmeinozz, CMEINOZZ, at AOL.com, and I'll be glad to chat with you on the net as long as I can. The other thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I give you guys somewhat of a book list of things that would be some of the top 10 whatever recommended books for you out there as you're listening. And these are pretty easy reads. They're not, you don't have to be a theological brilliant man or woman to be able to understand and contemplate these topics. In fact, most of you will be able to read through these in a few days, and if not, you'll at least be able to, leave the scene from your read with a couple cool ideas and thoughts. And so, just going to run through a basic list. I usually try to recommend these to anybody who's interested. One would obviously be Rome Sweet Home by Scott Hahn, Born Fundamentalist, Born Again Catholic by David Curie, Crossing the Tiber by Stephen Ray, By What Authority by Mark Shea, Surprised by Truth. There's now a second one out by Patrick Madrid. And then, again, Henry Nouwen, I really enjoyed him. The Catholic Response by Peter Stravinskas. And forgive me if I've mispronounced any name here. Specifically, there was some other books that recently I've found that have been really enjoyable. Jeff Caven's My Life on the Rock, Unabridged Christianity by Father Romero, as mentioned earlier. I also mentioned Thomas Howard. He has a few books out that are fantastic. And I find that, for me, reading something that discusses a topic that I'm already somewhat familiar with is not a disservice to my intellect. Rather, it reinforces, and it also challenges me to rethink and to re-understand more and more those issues. So even though, for example, many of these books will discuss Mary or purgatory or confession, it's going to be kind of exciting to be able to see the different ways that people can talk about it without it going against magisterial teaching. And that's, I think, very important. Also, Carl Keating's Catholicism and Fundamentalism. He has some new books out that are fantastic as well. And there are a couple magazines that I would obviously refer, Envoy magazine and This Rock magazine. And then specifically the website, www.catholic.com, that's Catholic Answers. And then finally, one of the most exciting books for me was a book I read. It was a novel. It was called Father Elijah by a guy named Michael D. O'Brien. He has a book series that is fantastic, and it's somewhat, kind of a novel idea of the end times in regards to a Catholic perspective. So I thought that was somewhat appropriate in light of the craze with the Left Behind series. This, I think, would be a far better alternative for us as Catholics. All right, I want to switch gears just a little bit right now and kind of talk about some of the issues that I was kind of dealing with in regards to my conversion. Some of this is topical, and what I'm going to do is just kind of give a little brief synopsis and then give you a bunch of scripture references. So if you have a pen or paper and you want to write these down, you can check them out at your convenience. And then after that, we're going to kind of phase into some of the final closing comments, I believe. All right, so what I wanted to do was kind of start with the concept of call no man father. For me, I can recall being very frustrated with Catholicism because of the way that they continued to bring reverence to mere men in regards to calling him father, especially since we knew that scripturally Jesus, it was clear in regards to, calling no man father, apparently. But yet, what I realize and what I've been, continuing to realize is that there is this understanding of calling a man father that is not irreverent, that is not wrong, unbiblical. In fact, there's repeated references to Father Abraham and to, Paul basically fathering children in the Lord, and that isn't at all looked upon as being contrary to, obviously, the Lord's will. And so, in thinking